I owned the family business, but they called me worthless. Their reaction when they found out my hard work left them shocked. The sun had barely begun its ascent over the sleepy town of Willow Creek when I stepped into the dimly lit office of Thompson & Company, our family's century-old furniture manufacturing business. The faint scent of sawdust and aged wood lingered in the air, a comforting yet haunting reminder of everything this place represented: tradition, legacy, and a lifetime of expectations that weighed heavily on my shoulders. As I settled behind the worn mahogany desk, now marked with scratches from years of use, I couldn't help but think about how much had changed since my father passed away 2 years ago, and how little anyone seemed to believe in me. From the moment I took over as CEO at just 28 years old, whispers followed me like shadows. "She doesn't know what she's doing," they said. "This is no job for a woman." Even within my own family, skepticism reigned supreme. My uncle Gregory, who once served as vice president under my father, made it clear he thought I was unfit for leadership. At every board meeting, his sharp remarks cut deeper than any blade could. "You're running this company straight into the ground," he'd sneer during heated discussions. And then there were cousins, my so-called peers, who rolled their eyes whenever I proposed new ideas or tried to modernize operations. To them, I wasn't just inexperienced, I was worthless. But what stung most wasn't their words, it was knowing they believed them. They didn't see the late nights spent poring over financial reports until my vision blurred. They didn't witness the countless hours I dedicated to learning every aspect of production, from operating machinery to perfecting intricate carvings by hand. No one knew about the sleepless nights spent worrying about payroll, supplier contracts, or whether we'd meet deadlines while maintaining quality standards. All they saw was someone young, inexperienced, and worst of all, female trying to fill shoes far too big for her feet. Still, I refused to give up. Every morning, I arrived before dawn and left long after sunset, determined to prove myself not only to others but also to silence the doubts gnawing at my own heart. It wasn't easy. There were days when frustration boiled over, leaving me questioning if all this effort was worth it. Yet something inside me kept pushing forward, a quiet voice reminding me why I started this journey in the first place. Growing up, I watched my father pour his soul into building Thompson & Company. He taught me everything he knew about craftsmanship, integrity, and hard work. This business wasn't just a source of income, it was part of our identity, woven into the fabric of who we were as a family. Losing him felt like losing a piece of myself, but taking over the company gave me purpose, a chance to honor his memory and carry his legacy forward. That thought alone fueled my determination, even when faced with relentless criticism. Despite the challenges, I found solace in small victories along the way. When I successfully negotiated better terms with suppliers, saving us thousands each quarter, I allowed myself a brief moment of pride. When employees praised improvements in workflow efficiency thanks to updated processes I implemented, their gratitude reminded me why I fought so hard. These moments might have gone unnoticed by those eager to dismiss me, but they meant the world to me. Each success, no matter how minor, became another brick in the foundation I was laying, one strong enough to withstand whatever storms lay ahead. Yet despite these accomplishments, the weight of judgment never truly lifted. Every decision I made came under scrutiny, every misstep magnified tenfold. It seemed impossible to escape the label of worthless stamped across my forehead in invisible ink. Some days, the pressure threatened to crush me entirely. But instead of crumbling beneath it, I chose to channel that pain into action. If people doubted me, fine. Let them doubt. One day, I promised myself, they would see exactly how much I sacrificed for this business, and maybe, just maybe, they'd regret ever doubting me in the first place. As spring turned to summer, the pace at Thompson & Company grew increasingly frantic. Orders flooded in faster than expected, thanks to a recent marketing campaign I spearheaded targeting younger demographics through social media platforms. While initial reactions from skeptics ranged from dismissive chuckles to outright mockery, social media, full furniture, the results spoke louder than their snide comments ever could. Sales skyrocketed, breathing new life into departments struggling to stay afloat. Suddenly, machines hummed non-stop, workers hustled tirelessly, and delivery trucks lined up outside the warehouse daily. With demand surging, managing day-to-day operations became an overwhelming juggling act. Production schedules needed constant adjustments, inventory levels required meticulous tracking, and customer service teams faced mounting inquiries. Despite hiring additional staff, gaps remained everywhere, gaps only I seemed capable of filling. So without hesitation, I dove headfirst into the chaos, wearing multiple hats simultaneously. By day, I navigated boardroom politics, presenting quarterly earnings reports and defending strategic decisions against relentless opposition. Nights transformed into marathons spent troubleshooting supply chain disruptions, reviewing design prototypes, and addressing employee concerns via email chains stretching well past midnight. Sleep became a luxury I could no longer afford. Dark circles etched themselves permanently beneath my eyes, serving as silent testaments to sleepless nights spent wrestling with spreadsheets and blueprints. Meals consisted of hastily grabbed sandwiches eaten standing beside conveyor belts or forgotten entirely amidst urgent phone calls. Personal relationships suffered too. Friends stopped inviting me out, assuming I'd decline anyway, while romantic prospects dwindled to non-existent. Loneliness crept in slowly, wrapping itself around me like a suffocating blanket. Yet, amidst the exhaustion and isolation, a strange sense of fulfillment emerged, an unshakable belief that every sacrifice brought me closer to proving my worth. One particularly grueling week stands out vividly in my memory. A major client requested last-minute customizations on a bulk order scheduled for shipment within 48 hours. Panic rippled through the factory floor as supervisors scrambled to adjust timelines without compromising quality. Knowing failure wasn't an option, I stationed myself directly in the heart of the operation, coordinating efforts between departments and personally overseeing modifications. For nearly 36 hours straight, I moved from workstation to workstation, ensuring each piece met exact specifications. Sawdust clung to my clothes, grease stained my hands, and sweat dripped down my back, but none of it mattered. What mattered was delivering excellence, exceeding expectations, and silencing critics, even if temporarily. When the final crate sealed shut mere minutes before the deadline, cheers erupted throughout the facility. Workers slapped high fives, congratulating each other on pulling off what many deemed impossible. Standing amidst the celebration, filthy and utterly drained, I felt a flicker of validation wash over me. Maybe, just maybe, I belonged here after all. However, triumphs such as these often went unrecognized beyond factory walls. Back in polished boardrooms adorned with portraits of previous CEOs, including my father, the narrative remained unchanged. Uncles dismissed operational successes as mere luck, attributing growth solely to market trends rather than innovative strategies. Cousins whispered behind closed doors, speculating about impending failures lurking around every corner. Even employees loyal to me expressed cautious optimism, wary of celebrating prematurely lest fortunes reverse unexpectedly. Their skepticism pierced deeper than any physical wound ever could. Doubts planted seeds of insecurity within me, whispering insidious questions late at night when silence enveloped the house. Was I truly cut out for this role? Could I sustain momentum indefinitely, or would cracks eventually surface, exposing vulnerabilities hidden beneath layers of determination? Exhaustion compounded these fears, threatening to erode confidence painstakingly built over months of relentless effort. Yet amidst turmoil, resilience blossomed. Rather than succumbing to despair, I channeled negativity into fuel propelling me further. Criticism sharpened focus, transforming perceived weaknesses into strengths. Each insult hurled my way became ammunition used to fortify resolve, reinforcing commitment to proving detractors wrong, not for vindication, but because deep down, I knew I deserved respect earned through sheer grit and perseverance. In quieter moments stolen between crises, I reflected upon motivations driving me forward. Beyond personal vindication lay a profound desire to preserve something greater than myself, a legacy spanning generations. Every plank sanded smooth, every joint meticulously crafted, carried echoes of ancestors dedicating lifetimes to perfecting artistry passed down through bloodlines. Failure wasn't merely unacceptable, it was unthinkable, tantamount to betraying heritage woven intricately into very essence of being. Thus, despite relentless adversity, I pressed onward, fortified by unwavering conviction rooted deeply within core beliefs. Challenges morphed from obstacles into opportunities, showcasing capabilities underestimated by naysayers blinded by prejudice. Through sheer force of will, I vowed to transform scornful glares into astonished gazes witnessing metamorphosis unfolding right before their eyes. As autumn leaves began painting streets gold and crimson, change swept through Thompson and Company with unprecedented speed. Implementing technological upgrades revolutionized production lines, introducing automated systems streamlining tasks previously reliant on manual labor. Robots now handled repetitive motions, freeing skilled artisans to focus on intricate details demanding human touch. Efficiency soared, reducing lead times significantly while enhancing overall product quality. Employees initially resistant to change gradually embraced innovations, marveling at increased productivity enabling higher wages and improved working conditions. Simultaneously, expanding product offerings attracted broader audiences seeking unique designs blending timeless elegance with contemporary flair. Collaborations with emerging designers injected fresh perspectives into collections, revitalizing brand image perceived stale by younger consumers. Marketing campaigns highlighting sustainability practices resonated strongly, positioning Thompson & Company as industry leaders prioritizing environmental responsibility alongside profitability. Public perception shifted dramatically, garnering accolades once deemed improbable fantasies conjured during sleep-deprived brainstorming sessions. Internally, restructuring initiatives addressed long-standing grievances festering beneath surface-level harmony. Transparent communication channels fostered open dialogue between management and workforce, empowering individuals to voice concerns constructively. Employee engagement programs cultivated camaraderie, fostering team spirit translating directly into enhanced performance metrics. Morale surged, evident in smiling faces greeting visitors touring facilities buzzing with renewed energy. Externally, accolades poured in thick and fast. Industry awards celebrated innovative approaches transforming traditional manufacturing paradigms. Media coverage spotlighted pioneering efforts championing gender equality within male-dominated sectors. Community outreach projects strengthened ties binding company roots firmly within local soil, earning goodwill extending far beyond balance sheets measuring monetary gains. Amidst whirlwind transformations reshaping foundations stone by stone, anticipation simmered regarding forthcoming revelations destined to alter dynamics irrevocably. Behind closed doors, preparations unfolded meticulously, setting stage for climactic confrontations poised to redefine perceptions entrenched stubbornly against tides of progress sweeping relentlessly forward. Uncle Gregory sat stiffly in his leather chair, fingers drumming impatiently against the armrest as he waited for the quarterly review meeting to commence. His usual scowl deepened when I entered the room, clipboard in hand, dressed sharply in a navy blue blazer that matched the determination burning in my chest. Around the table, familiar faces arranged themselves, cousins smirking knowingly, distant relatives exchanging skeptical glances, and longtime advisors nodding solemnly as though already mourning impending disaster. The atmosphere crackled with tension, thick enough to slice through with a knife. "Let's get this over with," Uncle Gregory barked, leaning forward aggressively. "We've got better things to do than listen to another round of excuses." Ignoring his barb, I placed the clipboard down and locked eyes with him. "Actually, today isn't about excuses. It's about results." My voice rang steady despite the storm brewing inside me. With deliberate calmness, I began unveiling figures projected onto the screen behind me, numbers telling stories of triumph where once only doubt resided. Revenue graphs climbed steeply upward, profit margins widened impressively, and customer satisfaction ratings soared to record highs. Gasps rippled through the room as jaws dropped collectively. "You can't be serious," muttered one cousin, squinting at the data as though hoping it would vanish like smoke. Another leaned closer, scrutinizing charts displaying streamlined production timelines and reduced waste percentages achieved through automation investments. Whispers escalated into murmurs, disbelief morphing gradually into reluctant admiration. But I wasn't finished yet. Flipping to the next slide, I revealed detailed breakdowns of community impact initiatives launched under my leadership. Scholarships funded for children of employees, partnerships forged with local schools teaching woodworking skills, and eco-friendly practices adopted reducing carbon footprints, all quantifiable contributions cementing Thompson & Company's reputation not merely as a profitable enterprise but as a responsible corporate citizen. Silence descended heavily as comprehension dawned fully. Faces flushed red with embarrassment or pale with shock stared back at me, realization dawning belatedly. Uncle Gregory's expression contorted grotesquely, caught somewhere between fury and humiliation. He opened his mouth to protest, perhaps accuse me of falsifying information, but words failed him entirely. Instead, he sank back into his seat, defeated by undeniable evidence laid bare before everyone present. Taking advantage of stunned silence, I pressed forward, detailing future plans expanding horizons even wider. International markets targeted strategically, digital platforms optimized continuously, and research development projects exploring cutting-edge materials promising revolutionary advancements awaited exploration. Visionary roadmaps stretched years ahead, outlining ambitious goals achievable only through sustained dedication demonstrated consistently thus far. Throughout presentation, emotions swirled visibly among attendees. Some nodded approvingly, acknowledging transformation wrought single-handedly despite overwhelming odds stacked firmly against success predicted confidently by cynics. Others shifted uncomfortably, guilt weighing heavily upon consciences burdened suddenly by harsh truths exposed mercilessly. Few dared maintain eye contact, shame coloring complexions varying shades darker than usual. Finally concluding formalities, I allowed pause pregnant with significance settle naturally. Breathing deeply, I addressed assembly directly, voice softened slightly conveying sincerity underlying professional demeanor maintained steadfastly till now. For 2 years, I've endured criticism, endured ridicule, endured being called worthless repeatedly without flinching. Not because I lacked feelings susceptible to hurtful words, but because I believed wholeheartedly in potential lying dormant waiting patiently for awakening touch igniting flames consuming doubts entirely. Pausing briefly, gaze sweeping inclusively capturing attention riveted unwaveringly, I continued earnestly. Every late night spent strategizing, every early morning tackling crises, every sacrifice made silently bore testament unwavering commitment refusing surrender regardless circumstances challenging resolve tested repeatedly. Today marks beginning acknowledgement earned rightfully, not handed graciously, but seized boldly confronting adversaries daring question capability proven conclusively. Applause erupted spontaneously, tentative initially then growing thunderously overwhelming entire space vibrating palpably with approval long overdue finally granted freely. Hands reached out offering congratulations heartfelt genuinely, apologies mumbled contritely sincere recognizing errors committed ignorantly blindly prejudiced assumptions clouding judgment unfairly. Yet amidst jubilation surrounding triumph celebrated collectively, lingering questions remained unanswered awaiting resolution inevitable approaching swiftly inevitably. As the applause faded into a hum of murmurs and nods, I felt the weight of their acknowledgement settle around me, not as vindication, but as an opportunity. The room was no longer filled with doubt or disdain, instead, it brimmed with curiosity, respect, and perhaps even regret. But this wasn't just about proving myself anymore. It was about forging a new path forward, a future where we could all work together without the shadows of skepticism clouding our efforts. Uncle Gregory sat slumped in his chair, his face pale and drawn. For the first time since I'd taken over the business, he avoided my gaze. His hands trembled slightly as he adjusted his tie, a gesture that spoke volumes about the storm raging within him. When he finally looked up, there was something unfamiliar in his eyes, vulnerability. I misjudged you, he admitted gruffly, his voice barely above a whisper. The words hung heavy in the air, raw and unpolished, like a wound being cleaned for the first time. I nodded slowly, meeting his gaze with steady resolve. You weren't alone in that, I said softly, letting the sting of those years linger just long enough to remind everyone present, including myself, of how far we'd come. But what matters now isn't who doubted me. What matters is what we do next. The room fell silent again, though this time it wasn't charged with tension, it was pregnant with possibility. My cousins exchanged uneasy glances, some offering sheepish smiles while others stared at their laps, clearly grappling with guilt. One by one, they began to speak, not with excuses, but with promises. Promises to support me, to trust my leadership, and to contribute meaningfully to the company's continued success. It was a turning point, fragile yet profound, as if the walls we'd built between us were beginning to crumble. After the meeting adjourned, I stepped outside into the crisp autumn air. The sun had dipped low on the horizon, casting golden light across the factory grounds. Workers were still bustling about, loading trucks and inspecting finished pieces, their movements synchronized like a well-rehearsed symphony. Watching them, I felt a swell of pride, not just for what we'd accomplished, but for the potential that lay ahead. This wasn't just my victory, it belonged to every person who had poured their heart into Thompson and Company. Later that evening, as I sat alone in my office reviewing notes from the day, there was a soft knock at the door. Without waiting for a response, Uncle Gregory entered, closing the door gently behind him. He looked older than I remembered, the lines on his face deeper, his shoulders slightly stooped. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then, clearing his throat, he pulled out a chair and sat down across from me. I owe you more than an apology, he began, his voice rough with emotion. I treated you unfairly, not because I didn't think you were capable, but because I was afraid. He paused, rubbing his temples as if trying to ease a headache. Your father trusted you with this company. He believed in you completely. And when he passed, I couldn't accept that someone so young, and especially a woman, could step into his shoes. I let my fear turn into resentment, and I'm sorry for that. His confession caught me off guard. In all the battles we'd fought, I'd never considered that his resistance stemmed from fear rather than pure malice. It didn't excuse his behavior, but it humanized him in a way I hadn't expected. Leaning back in my chair, I studied him carefully, searching for sincerity in his weathered features. Finally, I spoke. Fear doesn't justify cruelty, Uncle Gregory. But I understand why you felt threatened. Change is hard, especially when it challenges traditions we've held onto for so long. He nodded, his expression pained. You're right. And I won't make excuses for how I acted. But I want to help now, if you'll let me. I may not agree with everything you've done, but I can see the results. You've earned my respect, whether I wanted to give it or not. For the first time in years, I allowed myself to feel a flicker of hope, not just for the company, but for our family. Extending an olive branch to Uncle Gregory wouldn't erase the past, but it could pave the way for healing. We're stronger together, I said simply. If you're willing to move forward, then so am I. Over the following weeks, things began to shift in ways I hadn't anticipated. With Uncle Gregory's reluctant but genuine support, initiatives that had once faced fierce opposition gained traction almost effortlessly. Board meetings transformed from battlegrounds into collaborative discussions, with ideas flowing freely and decisions made collectively. Even my cousins, who had once dismissed me outright, started contributing actively, bringing fresh perspectives that complemented my own.